Today I want to talk to you guys about something that is so common in the YouTube comments that I had to make a video about it. It's probably one of the most common questions I get. Back to Eden, Curtis, back to Eden is the way. Why aren't you doing it that way? Okay, well, there's a lot of reasons actually. And after seeing Justin Rhodes' new video with Paul Goche, I believe he pronounced his last name, with Back to Eden, I was inspired to make the video because I saw it, I understood it more. I kind of understood it a while ago, but seeing it and seeing Paul talk about it made a lot more sense to me. So, geez, there's a lot of ones to go through on why it doesn't make sense in a commercial or market gardening context. But first, I just wanted to say, I've got t-shirts for you guys now. A lot of requests, a lot of people asking about Green City Acres t-shirts. urbanfarmer.co, buy apparel. Shirts are in there, lots of options. Check it out. So back to Eden. Now, there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense. So for one, okay, one thing about Back to Eden is that, well, let me actually explain the principles as I understand them to you, and then kind of go through why it doesn't make sense in my context. So I will link to Justin's video at the end of this. Check it out. But so the whole concept is just layer wood chips on the soil, and that keeps the moisture in the soil, the microbes, it functions like a forest floor essentially. It builds up humus and builds up soil biology, and you're not rototilling, so you're not dehydrating your soil and killing the bacteria and good bugs in it. Totally makes sense. But there's so many reasons why it would be hard to do on a commercial level because of the amount of resources and time it would take, and I'll kind of go through a bunch of reasons why that would be. So first of all, the density issue. When you look at Paul's garden, look how far things are spaced apart. Look at my beds, okay? So in this 14-foot wide tunnel, I have 4 30-inch beds with 4 rows each. If I did this greenhouse with Back to Eden methods, I'd probably have 5 single rows of crop. So there wouldn't be a lot of yield there. This, I've got, let's say I could fit 5 or 6 of his rows in here. I got 16 rows in here with 4 beds. So a hell of a lot more production in a lot less space. One of the biggest reasons that would be very challenging about the Back to Eden method on a commercial standpoint is that wood chips aren't really a good medium to plant crops into quickly. Not to say that they aren't, like you could certainly transplant crops into them and they would do well because you would need to water them, I get that, but you can do that by hand. And if you can do that by hand, you're going to do it in single rows. Okay, so how many times are you going to go up and down and up and down and up and down? It's transit time. It takes a lot more. In a 30-inch bed, we're planting 4 rows at a time. In fact, we're using the paper pot transplanter to do that now, and we're doing it in minutes. So a paper pot transplanter wouldn't work in thick wood chips. It would if they were really decomposed after a while. It could potentially work, but I think it would be really challenging. The chips would rip the paper basically, so difficult there. But really what it comes down to there is transit time, is you're going back and forth and back and forth. So if you're harvesting and you're going to harvest a row of lettuce or spinach or whatever you've got, you're going to harvest that, walk down the row, and then go down the next row, and so on and so forth. If you're harvesting on a 30-inch bed with 4 rows of crops, you're harvesting 4 at once, and you're moving back. Another thing that's really impractical about it, and I get, how people say no weeds with Back to Eden, just layer on mulch, no weeds. Totally get it. It makes a lot of sense. And it would save you time with weeding. But how long does it take you to set up a plot with wood chips? And how long does it take till you can plant in those wood chips? Because I've tried this. I've tried to plant in wood chips before. I've been to many gardens. I've been to hundreds of farms around the world. And I've never seen anybody doing this on a commercial level. That aside, wood chips need to be somewhat decomposed in order for them to be usable, or you just got to plant really deep. So you lay down a ton of, let's say we do this whole plot. This plot is about 1,200 to 1,300 square feet in total usable production area. So how long would it take me to lay down and spread those wood chips? A little while. And then those wood chips are going to be very dry on the surface for a while. Once they start to decompose, they get better and better, and that's why it does make sense from a soil building standpoint. But so the soil's going to be the chip's going to be dry on the top. And so can you direct seed into that? No. Not right away. Maybe you could over time again, but it would take a lot of time to do that. So the amount of time it takes to plant and get things in the ground is going to take way longer, because you have to plant things deep so that they have access to some either mineral soil or moisture, right? So in the top, if it's just a bunch of chips, it's going to be dead dry and nothing's going to grow in there right away. So that pretty much eliminates doing anything like direct seeded, high density greens, which are a very profitable crop, meaning that you can only use that land in certain ways. And so, the basic thing here, the basic principle here is that in Back to Eden gardening, you would need 4, 5, 6 times as much land to get even close to the amount of production that we get out of our land. So another reason why it doesn't make sense kind of ties into the fact that you need more land, but you need more season extension stuff, right? So one 50-foot Caterpillar tunnel here that costs about $500 to $600 in materials and to build can cover 4 30-inch beds at 16 rows of crop. So if I'm doing Back to Eden and I only get 5 or 6 rows of crop in there, let's just say 5 to 15, 3 times less crop in there with the same cost of season extension. So it's not just season extension, it's irrigation if you've got it, and maybe Paul doesn't, so maybe he wins on that one, but it's insect netting or any type of season extension, whether it be greenhouse poly, low tunnels with agribon or remake cloth, or any of that kind of season extension stuff. You're going to use at least 3 times as much. So you're losing on cost there. So really all this comes down to is context. It's what's the context? And in Paul's context, he's a homesteader and he wants to grow his own food to eat and share with his family and friends. Great, that makes perfect sense. That's a perfect reason to do that kind of thing. But to farm for production and to make a living off it, it just doesn't make any practical sense. Where it really loses is the harvesting, and planting. The planting and harvesting, you can't streamline. And so you would dedicate so much more time and labor to that. And that's one thing that's so different about our farm, is that we can do $100,000 a year in sales on a 1/4 acre of land with 2 people working full time. Now, to do it in the Back to Eden way, you would need a lot more staff, or you just need a lot more time. One or the other, perhaps both. To have all that spread out crop, it takes so much longer to plant, so much longer to harvest. If you did it with machines, it could make a lot of sense, but I don't think using machine harvesting like tractor harvesting is really the whole point of the Back to Eden thing. So I don't think that's going to work there. All this comes down to context. It's all about context. And so many people think that there's one thing. It's like, this is the one thing. This is the way to do that. This is the way to do that. This is the way to garden. This is the way to a political system, or this is the best diet, or this is the best way to live your life, or this is the best religion, or whatever it is. I call this a monoculture mindset. I don't know if it's an innate human thing that we do, but people are always looking for that one thing, and then they see that one thing. It's like born again, people who are born again, and they get obsessed with it. And I've been there. Where I've found something that really excited me, and I wanted to share it with everybody and let everybody know. But the thing is, that's not how nature works. There is no monoculture in nature. And I think we don't all live in the same place. We don't all have the same culture. We don't all live under the same economic or political circumstances. We're all different. And there's many different ways to do the same thing. And that's really what all this comes down to, is the Back to Eden garden method is fantastic for homesteading and situations like that's Paul in, and I'm sure there's lots of people that live in those situations, and that's great. But to run a commercial farm, even a small scale market garden, sorry, just doesn't make sense. Either way, I wanted to share those thoughts with you guys. Again, one of the most common questions I get. Check out the t-shirts on the website. Talk to you later.
Picking cucumbers.
Okay.